She stood in the courtroom, a 16-year-old girl facing seasoned lawyers who barely hid their smirks. This was supposed to be a disaster. But then she spoke, shocking everyone. Her arguments tore through the case, and when she revealed her final piece of evidence, the attorney's face went pale. The judge leaned forward and said, "I am ruling in favor of." But what happened next changed everything. Let's start from the beginning. Before we dive into this gripping courtroom drama, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. We bring you the most compelling legal battles, untold stories of justice, and jaw-dropping courtroom moments every day. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming next. Justice has never been this intense. The tension in the courtroom thickened. Olivia Carter stood firm, gripping her documents as she felt the weight of every disbelieving stare. The defense attorney, Richard Holloway, was still smirking, but the slight twitch in his jaw betrayed his surprise. He hadn't expected Judge Langley to allow this. Olivia knew what they all saw. A teenage girl, small for her age, with no legal degree, no courtroom experience, no authority. Just a kid standing between a corporate giant and the home they were trying to take. They expected her to crumble. She stepped toward the podium, her voice steady despite the pounding of her heart. "Your Honor, the case before us involves Fairmont Realty's use of predatory foreclosure tactics. My mother, Emily Carter, was led to believe she was signing a standard refinancing agreement, only to find out months later that she had unknowingly agreed to a balloon payment clause that made it impossible for her to keep up with the terms." Holloway sighed loudly, shaking his head. "Your Honor, this is precisely why legal representation is required. The complexities of contract law—" "The law is clear, Mr. Holloway," Olivia interrupted. "Pro se representation is fully legal. More importantly, my mother was never given a proper disclosure statement. According to the Truth in Lending Act, this contract is already on shaky legal ground." A flicker of something crossed Holloway's face. Mild annoyance, perhaps, or the realization that this wasn't going to be as easy as he thought. Judge Langley tapped her pen on the bench. "Miss Carter, do you have evidence to support your claim?" Without hesitation, Olivia flipped open her folder and pulled out a copy of the contract. "Yes, Your Honor. Here is my mother's agreement with Fairmont Realty. Nowhere in this document does it contain the required clear disclosure of the balloon payment schedule. And according to the Supreme Court ruling in Williams v. First National Bank, 1976, contracts that mislead or withhold essential financial terms can be rendered unenforceable." The murmurs in the room grew louder. Holloway's smirk had vanished. He stepped forward, his voice sharper. "That's a baseless interpretation. The agreement states, 'It buries the most important clause on page 27 in fine print under ambiguous language.'" Olivia shot back. She turned to the judge. "Your Honor, Fairmont Realty has a documented history of using the same deceptive contract structure to target lower-income homeowners. I've gathered records from 3 other families who were foreclosed on under nearly identical conditions. I request that these cases be entered into evidence." Judge Langley took the documents from her hands and began skimming through them. Silence filled the room. Even the prosecutor, who had been watching with detached amusement, now leaned in slightly. Olivia stood her ground. The battle was far from over, but for the first time since stepping into this courtroom, she saw something new in Holloway's eyes. Not amusement, not dismissal, something closer to unease. And that meant she was winning. The silence in the courtroom deepened. Olivia Carter stood firm, her small hands resting on the stack of legal documents she had spent weeks studying. She knew the weight of the moment. This wasn't just about her mother. It was about proving that powerful corporations couldn't manipulate working-class families with legal trickery. Holloway, the seasoned defense attorney, gave an exaggerated sigh, adjusting his cufflinks as if bored. "Miss Carter, I understand your passion, but the law does not operate on feelings. Your mother signed this contract. That is a fact." Olivia's expression remained composed, but she felt the tension coil inside her. "It is a fact," she agreed. "But so is this. Fairmont Realty systematically structures contracts to hide predatory clauses. They bury critical terms in pages of fine print, knowing that the average homeowner won't catch them until it's too late." Holloway shook his head, exhaling sharply through his nose. "Miss Carter, contracts are legal documents. It's the responsibility of the signer to read and understand them before agreeing. If your mother failed to do so, that is unfortunate, but not illegal." Olivia didn't flinch. She reached for a marked-up page from her files and lifted it for the courtroom to see. "This is the original contract my mother signed. If we look at page 27, buried under complex phrasing, we find the balloon payment clause. This clause, Mr. Holloway, states that after 12 months, the loan balance triples, something Fairmont failed to disclose clearly." Judge Langley leaned forward slightly, eyes scanning the document. The jurors whispered amongst themselves. Olivia seized the moment. "Your Honor, under Title 15, Chapter 41 of the U.S. Code, the Truth in Lending Act requires lenders to provide clear and conspicuous disclosure of loan terms. Fairmont Realty violated this. And in Williams v. First National Bank, 1976, contracts designed to mislead consumers were deemed legally void." The prosecutor, who had previously been watching with a smirk, shifted in his seat. Holloway's confidence wavered for the first time. "That's an interesting argument," the judge admitted, flipping through the papers. "Mr. Holloway, does your firm have a response?" Holloway took a calculated pause before stepping forward. "Your Honor, while Miss Carter's research is impressive, it is incomplete. Yes, there are laws protecting consumers, but Fairmont Realty did provide a disclosure agreement. The responsibility of reading it falls on the borrower." Olivia's heart pounded, but she didn't hesitate. She reached for another document. "This is my mother's copy of the contract. You'll notice something important. There's no disclosure statement attached." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The judge's eyebrows lifted. "Additionally," Olivia continued, her voice stronger, "I have statements from 3 other families who lost their homes under nearly identical conditions. None of them were given proper disclosure statements either. This isn't an isolated case. This is a pattern." The room buzzed with murmurs. Holloway's jaw tightened. Judge Langley adjusted her glasses. "If this is true, it would indicate systematic fraud." She turned to Holloway. "Mr. Holloway, do you have documentation proving Fairmont Realty issued these disclosures?" The seasoned attorney hesitated. Olivia held his gaze. She had him. The weight of the moment pressed down on the courtroom. The once smirking Richard Holloway was now visibly unsettled, his confident facade cracking under the weight of Olivia's relentless argument. He tugged at his tie as if it had suddenly become too tight. "Your Honor, this is highly unusual," he said, grasping for control. "The girl is cherry-picking legal precedents." Judge Langley didn't even let him finish. "She's citing case law, Mr. Holloway, and so far I find her arguments compelling." The words hit like a hammer. A few heads in the audience turned, eyes narrowing as they reconsidered their assumptions about Olivia. Even some of the jurors, who had previously watched with mild amusement, now leaned forward in their seats. Olivia didn't hesitate. She had momentum, and she wasn't going to let it slip. "Not only is this contract invalid," she said, lifting another set of documents, "but Fairmont Realty has a documented pattern of using these same deceptive tactics to push families into foreclosure. I have case files showing at least 3 other instances where homeowners signed nearly identical agreements, only to realize too late that they had been set up to fail." She stepped forward and placed the documents onto the judge's bench with quiet confidence. The stack was thick, filled with notarized statements, court filings, and evidence that Fairmont Realty's practices weren't just predatory, they were deliberate. Judge Langley picked up the top document and skimmed through the first page. Her expression, already serious, darkened as she flipped to the next. The air in the room seemed to shift, the previous air of condescension replaced by something far heavier. "These claims are serious," she said, looking directly at Holloway. "Do you have a response?" For the first time since the trial had begun, Holloway didn't have an immediate retort. He opened his mouth as if to speak, but no words came out. He glanced at the documents again, then at Olivia, then at the judge. The confident, polished attorney who had walked into the courtroom expecting an easy win now looked like a man standing on shaky ground. He started, his voice lower than before. He swallowed. "We would need time to review this information." It was weak. Holloway knew it. The entire courtroom knew it. A murmur rippled through the audience, the energy in the room shifting completely. The people who had dismissed Olivia as just a kid were now watching her in stunned silence. There was no more laughter, no more smirks, no more condescension. They weren't seeing a teenager fumbling her way through a courtroom anymore. They were seeing a lawyer in the making, one who had just backed a seasoned attorney into a corner he wasn't prepared for. And Olivia Carter wasn't done yet. The courtroom held its breath. Judge Langley set down the papers with deliberate finality, her gaze sweeping across the room before landing on Olivia. "Given the compelling nature of Miss Carter's argument and the evidence presented," she said, her voice firm, "I am issuing an immediate injunction against Fairmont Realty. The foreclosure on the Carter home is hereby voided, pending further investigation." For a second, no one moved. The weight of the decision sank in, disbelief hanging in the air like a held breath. Then, like a slow building wave, the realization hit. Olivia had won. The silence shattered into applause. Some people stood, clapping, while others whispered in hushed amazement. Even the reporters in the back, who had arrived expecting a spectacle, maybe even a train wreck, now leaned forward, their pens scratching furiously as they documented the moment. Camera flashes popped like fireworks, illuminating Olivia's stunned but steady expression. At the defense table, Holloway looked like he had been hit with a sledgehammer. His lips pressed into a thin, bloodless line, his polished confidence drained away. This wasn't just a loss. It was a public humiliation at the hands of a 16-year-old girl. But Olivia barely noticed him. She turned to her mother, and the moment their eyes met, the adrenaline, the tension, the sheer fight of it all finally caught up with her. Emily's eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she reached for Olivia's hand, squeezing it tight. "You did it," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Olivia squeezed back. "We did it." They turned to leave, but the courtroom doors had barely swung open before the reporters descended. "Miss Carter, how did you learn all this?" one called out, microphone stretched toward her. "Who helped you prepare your case?" Another voice cut in. "Do you plan to study law?" The questions came rapid fire, cameras flashing, voices overlapping. Olivia didn't hesitate. She met their eager gazes, her lips curving into a small, knowing smile. "I read." With that, she walked past them, head high, her mother by her side. And behind her, Holloway stood frozen, watching the girl he had dismissed so easily walk away, not just victorious, but unforgettable. If you enjoyed this story, leave a like and let us know in the comments which courtroom drama or legal battle you'd like us to cover next. See you in the next video.